There we go. Now we're recording. Okay. Welcome to the IT417 Data Extraction, Transformation, and Loading class. I'm going to be your professor. This is going to be a 2-student plus me. So it's going to be actually a directed study type class, which is a little different than traditional courses in that my goal here is to help you achieve your goals, to help you find the path forward, to guide you to basically doing a to give you direction, but it's self-managed process on how to achieve the end results of this class, right? Which is going to be what you're looking for is a individual project completely written out in APA format. The overall process of how an ETL activity should happen with an organization. In this case, we're going to go over the individual project, its expectations, how you're going to approach it, and yeah. I believe you are, I think I'm sharing, yep, okay, I'm sharing my PowerPoint package at the moment. It's good. So, introductions. I'm your professor, Dr. Christopher Otwell. My doctorate is in computer science and cybersecurity. I recently acquired it back this past July from CTU. So, and I know both of you guys are on the verge of completing your degree. So, in theory, all three of us will be walking the stage at the same time. Well, same day, potentially not at the same time. But so my goal here is to help you get to that point. I will go and record a brief lecture each of these live chats that will go over the material and the weekly agenda, the expectations, and your goal is to do the work needed and to ask questions as you need them, and I will be grading them as that. Now, with that in mind, I've been working in the computer industry since, if you include internships, since as early as 91 officially. I did do some unpaid exploratory stuff for my high school over in Germany, on the U.S., one of the few U.S. bases that got closed down. But in that high school, they didn't have anything better for me to do, so they had me build out their computer network there back in the late 80s. And I was actually recognized inside the Stars and Stripes as being one of the first computer networks built for a little smaller DoD American school. If anyone can find that article, I would love to have a copy of that myself, because I lost the copy that I still had like 3 decades ago. But nonetheless, I've been working in the early 90s, done work for Sun Microsystems, Java development, worked on the team that built out what became Java 1.0, or Java Beans. The idea at the time was to find a way to make the toaster talk to the refrigerator, and that was the whole goal behind Java. So I've also done work in the missile defense industry, in operations centers, so Forge and a couple other projects. So I've been actively supporting military industry since 95, and have been doing that ever since. I've started teaching in CTU back in 2017. Number of classes I've taught, mostly cybersecurity and IT related. And yeah, so there's 2 of us in this class. Your objective in the class is we talk about ETL, which is a 4-layer process of architecture design when it comes to databases, right? So the functional layer, the operational management layer, the auditing control layer, and the utility layer. And we'll address each of those in various aspects of each week. So there'll be a book that you'll have as your primary source. It's going to include the information you need in order to produce SQL scripts, and as part of your individual project. as well as a secondary book that's going to be the Muse website, which is basically something that a bunch of professors at CTU at one point put together as secondary textbook material, with the idea that someday it might become the primary textbook material, and provided by the school, so that we become more and more of a more and more effective online teaching platform in the process, by having common knowledge in that's available to the students, and to eventually reduce the need to actually print books. So, which the printing part has now disappeared. So the requirements we're going to go over requirements analysis needs this week for how the ETL works, identify data that the ETL needs. Each discussion board each week, your discussion boards are going to be worth roughly 33% of your overall grade, and your individual project is going to be worth roughly 66 to 67% of your overall grade. I am going to be pretty strong on the enforcing the APA requirements. That is an expectation of how the paper is written. So if you're not familiar with APA, not sure how you would have made it to this point, but well, in any case, yeah. So make sure you keep up with the assignments, and we should be good in this class. So don't forget, your initial discussion board post is due on Thursdays. Your student peer reviews will be on Saturday. As there's only 2 students in this class, I will need to make a better effort on responding to every single discussion board as a secondary post to yours, as well as giving you my thoughts on how this should work, as well as something for you to reply to yourself. If we get to the point where, because there's only 2 of you on responding to each other's posts, and you need a secondary post, I'm not going to be a hard press on that particular piece. So traditionally, discussion boards require you to respond to 2 of your fellow classmates, but since there's only 2 of you total, that's a little bit harder unless I make my own post for each week as if I was a student as well. So, and which I may do. But don't forget, those replies need to be approximately 100 words in length. The biggest thing is I'm looking for content, not so much just words. So if you have something that's short on words but decent in quality of content, that matters more to me. Each week, if I said something or explained something in a way that didn't make any sense or seems contradictory to the way you've been taught, don't feel ashamed or by that fact, or definitely email me, call me out. That's fine. I will answer questions, and if I did a bad job of explaining it, those are called hanging chads, which are basically areas of the presentation that I didn't do a very good job of explaining. So I will go there and fix any hanging chads each week that I get from questions from you guys, and or I may even include those questions into future versions of this presentation for usage in the future. This will be my 3rd time, I believe, teaching the 417 class. Each week, I have the CTU portal, goes over the expectations of your assignments due. I will have this as well as a reminder during the live chats, something along those lines where it's a colored card, like a stoplight chart, but a color code to give you a status of where we're at. In this context, green is what's due this week, gray is what's due next week, white is future, and things in the past have become yellow are considered late, or blue shouldn't be graded anymore at that point. So I shouldn't see anything blue from either of you in this entire class. Don't forget that there is a 1 to 7 days you lose 10% of your total points for the assignment. I have the discretion of enforcing that to the letter of the law if I wanted to, but I don't necessarily have to. If it's 8 or more days, according to the policy, I should be awarding no points for it unless I agree to adjust for a different due date and or agree to give you an extension. We are a 5-week class. Unless you have a really good reason, I do expect to see the individual project, some portion of it each week, because I'm expecting to see enhancements to that each week as we go. The weekly briefing packages will be uploaded as PDFs into the area of the portal now. So for under resources, I believe, course information resources. So yeah, books and resources here. You'll see that there. You'll also see the individual project information, and the APA file has been uploaded to there as well. I've already checked your introductions. They look pretty good. I'm happy to see both of y'all there. The secondary discussion board for week 1 expects a 400 to 600 page piece on your thoughts and ideas about the ETL process itself. What do you think is important to consider during ETL? During what is common issues during data transformation activities? If you have examples of how you've done data transformation in the past, that's great. That's a good basis by which to start your post off with. And what implications do you need to consider when doing reconciliation? So, sorry, just got back from Philadelphia where it was a cold, rainy climate and having to walk out in the rain several nights. I been trying to fend off getting a cold at this point. So, okay. Make sure you use the APA format for this. For your Muse website, your Muse recording content, you can check out the data requirements analysis page there. I know occasionally that they update the Muse with a new revisions of it, so I didn't check to see if this is the latest revision of Muse for this particular topic, but since I used it a year ago, it's probably not likely to change since. But in any case, if you needed it, if you go to your resources and go to the Muse website as your secondary textbook and it's a newer URL, that's fine. It'll include everything we did in the past. Also in the books and resources, this is where I put the APA template for 300, 400 level students, which I expect you to use, as well as the individual project expectations, which I'll go over here in a second. So you can download them and be able to read them offline in their full context. But basically, each week we will be building upon an existing project, adding to it, and I will do reviews and I will provide you redline feedback that I expect you to incorporate into the following week's revisions. And I will deduct points if you don't integrate those recommended changes to it as you build each week. So the ETL week 1 is about the ETL requirements process. Week 2 will be data extraction procedures. Week 3 is data transformation procedures. 4 would be data loading procedures. 5 would be the future data warehouse scenario. I will go ahead and bring up the Word document here so you can see everything. But so this gives you an idea of all the expectations. In that, in order to achieve the SQL pieces of this project, where you have to build out SQL scripts to do the functions, here's your where you can get MySQL from, and from the website of the textbook that you have, you can use the Spoon IDL or IDE for the ETL process. So it may redirect you to the last time I used it, it redirected you to Hitachi Social Innovations as a new source of the ownership of the material, but it was still the same project. So your assignments for week 1 in the individual project is to go through that process, to describe the general enterprise environment for the case study organization, describe the data required to build that case model, describing the 4-layer approach you want to take and how you want to approach it in those various goals and objectives, and to provide some high-level idea of how you're approaching it. So ultimately what we're going to do is try to build a project where we take this concept of this data. This is going to be your data set type. You're going to build and figure out how to build SQL statements to extract this data, change its format so that we can upload it to something else to use in theory go from one older database, migrating it to a newer database schema. So an old schema to a new schema, either between the same types of databases across like version upgrades or something, like if you went from like an Oracle 11 to Oracle 19, or if you needed to go from Access to Oracle, or if you need to go something like DB to IBM on, say, a VAX VMS, and you wanted to put it over onto a VMware Oracle-based system. How do you do that data transformation, right? We've had thousands of databases now lost to history because people failed to understand the CTL process, and we now got to the point where data that was recorded in the 80s and 90s has become functionally lost, scientific research has been lost permanently because of the lack of an ETL process being executed on important research databases. So that's why ETL is actually important, because we want to conserve and preserve all of the knowledge in the world, right? Now that we've built better things like XML schemas, extended JSONs, we've been able to now have data that is more readily available, human readable, and easily transformable. Where in the past, it was all completely binary, custom built to the software product, and it was the way they export it was based on whether or not that product built a way to export data or not. And if you did export it, into what format, and could you read that format such that you could use it to build custom tools with which to extract the data and add to it, right? So to be successful during week 1, my expectations should be a thorough review of the environment, understanding where you're working in, what you're doing, describing your environment. The environment is, think of it like you're building a story of a mythical company that you worked for. You can be as accurate as you want, but you need to be, I need to understand where it is you're coming from, right? It doesn't have to be a real company. We're going to take real data. I want you to manipulate real data, but describing it from a story standpoint, adding context to what you're doing and why. So that helps to describe the environment that you're working in, gives you the idea of how to do this stuff. And because the ETL then becomes an important process for the overall data lifecycle of a data warehouse, right? So how do you get that stuff? Then you got your environment, you understand the layout of your code or layout of the data itself, how it's organized. Then you can start building the process by which to transform it. So I want you to tell me how this data is organized, how it's being laid out, what your environment is that you're working within, and effectively what you intend to use the data with. So let's go over to the Word document. Let's start off with the APA document. So in the APA template, you'll see the running head, short version. You'll have an abstract. I do expect there to be an abstract in this thing. That'll give me, that's where you describe your environment or the basis by what you're trying to do. 6th edition publication. Oh, I need to probably update this then, because we've now officially migrated, CTU's officially migrated over to the 7th edition. So, all right, I may update this with a 7th edition version of this file if I go find one. So, but really beyond that, the running head is an example of where it's changed. The abstract changes a little bit, but beyond that, the bold and heading for these different types of heading layers are the same. The text is generally the same. A few things from like references that you'll need to do correctly. I used Citation Machine when I was working my doctoral program to produce my references accurately. The only thing I ever had to do was to worry about the correct italicization once you put it into Word, because it will copy and paste from the website as straight text. So, but you pretty much, if you copy and text from citationmachine.net over to here, you can pretty much get all your references done. They should be alphabetically by the reference last name here. This should always be alphabetical. So, yep, that shouldn't be hard to do. Don't forget to check for things like your page number up in the corner, and the corrected version of the short version of the title. So I will go look to see if we have a 7th edition template now posted for graduate students or undergraduate students to use. So definitions. What's the loading? Loading's the stage in which the extraction of parsing dating can be tested. It's either the stages in the correct, your data will not match up to the field. So basically, if you have your data layout such that you have, if you think of Excel, right, you have your columns of, say, name, age, date, and then you have your rows, which is your users' names, and then it goes down by the other pieces. You fill out your whole grid of data over time, right? So that gives you the layout of it. When you export from Excel, it comes in CSV files, so you have an understood way that the data is then parsable, because it comes as a common separated fields cross from left to right, top to bottom. Databases should be treated in a similar manner, right? So maybe it'll come out in JSON, maybe it'll come out in XML, or maybe it'll come out in CSV. Either way, any of those, you should be able to understand the format by which you can then parse that data and make sure you then align by, say, if you read it one item at a time, you should be able to know where to put it into each given cell within a schema. So one way to make sure you have the correct version of the data is to check to see if your timestamps, if it's a source is a flat file, and review the latest update that you're pulling it from, or make sure you're using the latest versions of the databases you're building into. And then you can do your extraction ETL process in there and build temporary tables such that you can ingest all the data, look at the data before you write it out to your final destination or your final database to ensure that you're getting the stuff in the correct order and or layout, right? Because you want to make sure that you get remember, data is always garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you have bad garbage coming in, but you don't review it, you could end up damaging operational databases by putting bad garbage into it. So that's why you need to load it to a temporary location or temporary tables to act as a safety net, so you can review that data in the layout, check it, see if it's accurately configured, see if it's bringing it in the right order, make sure that your ETL process is functioning correctly and parsing correctly, assigning all the correct values where you need it. Then you could push it from the temporary to production. So temporary tables can really help you ensure that your data is correct before they reach you, because you want to ensure, as from a QA perspective, that you're not using garbage data, you're not bringing in bad data and damaging production systems by doing so. So that's what it is. Multiple databases can stretch out. Keep in mind when you're doing that. So ensure maximum efficiency out of the process. You can take the form by not duplicating unnecessary data. You can then, from that temporary data, actually, if you need to, make adjustments to the data set so that you can achieve best possible results by looking over that information to ensure you have accuracy of your information, right? So helps also reduce number of future calls and loading by testing them in a thing to ensure that you have your process down successfully before you go live to production. There's always 4 layers: the functional layer, the operational layer, the ABC layer, the audit balance control layer, and then the utility layer. Extraction is the process that gets data from one place to another. So really it's about taking data from one spot, grabbing it out of there, and then understanding how to grab that data. Transform it is a process to get it to the data that data you have loaded or extracted, and transform it. You basically convert it to that layout you need or the format you need, fixing bad data cells into accurate data. Sometimes you need to take certain data cells and split them into multiple pieces. Sometimes you need to normalize your data down further into smaller sets of the schema. So it's all about doing that at the time. Loading is taking it from the temporary and then preparing it for your testing process or prepping for advancing it to production. And the warehouse process is about once it's already done, your data's been verified, how it becomes part of the overall data warehouse or how it becomes part of the operational database. So in this first week, a lot of it's going to be about requirements analysis, right? What does the data do? What are you using it for? Where did it come from? What is the purpose of this data? How do you make better use of it? What is driving the need for it, right? So you need to understand what your existing tables are. If you need to reformat those tables, recombine that data, rewrite how it's specified, and try to get things into something that makes sense, right? So the extraction process is how to get it from one place to another, how you set up, stage it, identifying your test plans, how to set up mapping of tables, and how to move the data from place to place, right? Your data transformations then is about how to take the inconsistencies of the data, how to fix the garbage data into something that's useful, how to make it something that is usable, that becomes a valid set of data for use in meeting the needs of your business. So your business logic and stuff, your rules. Data loading is about the front end process where you're loading that data into something that you can then manipulate from there on so that you can get it to eliminate all the garbage data, make sure that the data becomes clean and functional, and then be able to release that data to production databases, right? So the warehouses is basically the process by which you're going to store it, how to access it, the OLLP process, or the online analytical processing engine, which is used for dealing with the tools needed to manipulate the data. So, oops. ETLs, entity relationship diagrams, is something that you'll need to build as part of data modeling. That helps you define how the data should be constructed, so you have an idea of where it's coming from, what it needs to be, and ultimately what the overall end result will look like, right? So you can use it to conduct. Sorry. So data warehouses can give you a means by which you can extract that data using programming languages, using extraction tools. It could be things as simple as flat files being read in by shell scripts, which is what I did back in the 90s. Or you can use Perl scripts, or you can write advanced Java code, JSON readers, and XML readers to figure out that information. But really, the tool is a means by which you can use to manipulate that data, ensure that you can extract it correctly from its location. You can then figure out from that, you can then determine where your garbage data is and makes corrections to it. But what the ETL's tools don't necessarily do is tell you what the sources should be. So you kind of have to know, as part of your relationship diagrams and or source data or data lakes, what all your different sources of data is. So you can program that into the tool so that it knows where to extract the information from. And then you have the ability to then make changes to it to ensure that it all gets loaded correctly, ensure that all the different sources get loaded correctly. So as ETL tools are generally, there's lots of custom ones out there, and then there's lots of ones that are built for standardized data sets. But each of them, in order to use them, needs a little bit of customization to understand the environment you're working within. So, because unless you are going from like Oracle to Oracle, where it could tell you a schema layout from export and then import the schema layout, you got to sometimes build your ETL tools in order to take the source, convert that source, or manipulate the data in such a way that you output it into a schema that your destination database will understand. And that's where ELT tools really matter the most, right? Because it's about the building the metadata in order to build the repository that can adjust that data correctly. So, like I said, there's 4 layers to it. In all these layers that are common components that support all layers, the answer is the utility layer, which supports all of them, because it gives you the ability to manipulate data, to understand, read, and function, and handle it. So the utility layer is all about manipulating. You can read about the layers in depth in your textbook. Which of the job pertains to the job stream definition related management of monitors? That would be the operational management layer, because it's about managing your information, managing your data lake, telling you where it's at, alerting you when there's mistakes or garbage data that's monitored. Make sure that everything coming in is meeting certain criteria. You're hard checking your inputs or your outputs so that people are not intentionally ingesting bad data into your data pool. So which is about balancing controls, job execution, that would be the audit balance control layer, right? Because it's about there to make sure that it's handling errors, make sure the jobs are continually running like they should be doing, make sure that pieces are audited such that it is all meeting your expectations. And then the layer that pertains to core extraction, transform, ETL process is all about the functional layer, because you need to be able to access things like APIs or data sets or understanding flat files, in which you're using it to grab the components to be processed. So, or bringing that data into memory from where it was stored for a long period of time. So, a couple other pieces that I didn't put into this package that I probably should have is there is a go jump over to a sharing of a website If you needed to want to have additional live chat data, I believe I put a link into our classes. Yeah, so I think I put a link on our classes piece there, but I'm gonna go ahead and go back to sharing now. All right, where'd you go? Share screen. I got 2 things left to share. Okay. YouTube. So on YouTube, there's multiple on my YouTube channel. There's multiple folders or collections of content. One has to do with this class, which is 417. The other one has to do with a class of IT254. So if you wanted to go and listen to other lectures of mine in the past on this particular topic, you're certainly welcome to go and look at my past classes of IT417 that you can then watch and or download. That'll help walk you through some of the same process. So one thing that'll be different about this class and my last class of doing 417, I'm going to be a little bit stricter about you actually following the assigned topic at this time, which has been reported in the individual project, right? So, so the default project within yeah. So the default project within the individual project is about handling people's addresses, their location data, their telephone numbers, and whatnot. I also gave the students an opportunity to do things like on IP address tables, host names, IP addresses, VLAN subnets. So basically the same kind of thing. It's just a different way of describing an address and data about an address to a person or an object and how that actually matters, right? So you could build yourself. If you follow this set, you'd be building like an IP address table in a network data center that what you need to do to get all your hosts and all the pieces you need to know to define how this host functions, what ports and protocols it functions on, IP addresses which it talks to, etc. Right? If you want to use the default standard project that this class is supposed to be done, it is all about doing it with addresses, phone numbers, city, state, zip code, that kind of data set. So build yourself a data set, understand what your local system is, and then you figure out how to extract that data into into it to that matters, right? So with this point, the biggest thing is following the concept where you're building a research paper based on the topics that then meets the necessary criteria for ETL, such as you have double space lines, APA format, title, headers, abstract, Oxford comma is something I will be looking for. The Oxford comma has to deal with a series of data pieces and how they're related to within the series. So yeah, I will provide feedback on each of those pieces, just so you know the pieces that I typically have noticed that I've had to deduct points from was the use of the comma, the lack of an APA format, its grammar, sentence structure, and where an information explanation is technically wrong. So I do look for content as well as quality as well as layout in this process. So let's go back to not sharing. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, definitely email me if you have questions. I hope this was beneficial for the first run. This is, like I said, this is gonna be a directed study class. So I will be helping you along the way to make sure you can achieve your ultimate goals here. So with that, thank you, and hope to hear from you soon. Thanks. Bye.